I was arranging fresh roses in my grandmother's crystal vase when my phone buzzed with a text from my daughter-in-law, Samantha. "Borrowed your ring for the party tonight. Hope you don't mind." My blood ran cold. The pink diamond ring she'd taken wasn't just any ring. It was worth $2 million, a family heirloom passed down through 5 generations of strong women who'd survived wars, depressions, and heartbreak. Within 60 seconds, I had my lawyer on the line, and within an hour, the police were surrounding her party. 3 years after my husband Robert passed away from pancreatic cancer, I thought I'd found new joy watching my son Thomas build his own family. At 68, I'd settled into a rhythm of solitude in our colonial home in Westport, Connecticut. The house felt too big without Robert's laughter filling the rooms, but I kept busy with my garden and the memoir I'd been writing about my 35 years as a federal judge. Thomas had always been my pride, board certified in cardiac surgery. At 32, he saved lives with the same steady hands that once built model airplanes in our garage. When he introduced me to Samantha 5 years ago, I saw something familiar in her eyes. She reminded me of myself at 28, hungry for a better life, determined to rise above circumstances that tried to keep her small. "Mom, I want you to meet someone special." Thomas had said that autumn afternoon, his voice carrying the nervousness of a teenager despite his medical degrees. Samantha walked into my living room wearing a simple black dress and a smile that seemed genuine. Her handshake was firm, her eye contact direct. She worked as a manager at an upscale boutique in Greenwich, she told me, having worked her way up from sales associate. "Your home is beautiful, Mrs. Hartwell," she'd said, admiring the oil paintings Robert had collected during our travels. "Please call me Elizabeth," I'd insisted, pouring tea from my mother's china set. The wedding came 18 months later. I gave them a reception at the country club and watched Thomas beam as Samantha glided across the dance floor. She'd chosen a modest dress, refusing the designer gown I'd offered to buy. I admired her independence then. Our Tuesday lunches became tradition. Samantha would drive over in her white Mercedes, a wedding gift from Thomas, and we'd eat salmon salads while discussing everything from Supreme Court decisions to her favorite reality shows. She showed interest in my stories about the difficult cases I'd presided over, especially the fraud trials. "You must have seen through so many lies," she'd say, leaning forward with fascination. "How did you always know who was guilty?" "Evidence," I'd tell her. "People think they're clever, but they always leave trails." The pink diamond ring lived in my bedroom safe, nestled in its original velvet box from 1892. My great-great-grandmother, Elizabeth, my namesake, had received it from a Russian duchess fleeing the revolution. The duchess had traded it for safe passage to America, pressing it into my ancestor's palm at Ellis Island, with tears streaming down her face. 8 carats of rare pink diamond surrounded by white diamonds in a platinum setting that had been redesigned only once in 1923. Each woman in our family had worn it for their portrait at age 40, then kept it safe for the next generation. I'd shown it to Samantha shortly after the wedding when she'd asked about family traditions. "It's magnificent," she'd breathed, holding it up to the light. "The color is extraordinary." "Argyle pink diamonds," I'd explained. "They don't mine them anymore. The value increases every year." She'd started asking to see my jewelry collection during her visits. At first, I was happy to share. Robert had loved surprising me with pieces from our travels, and each had a story. The emerald brooch from Ireland when Thomas graduated medical school, the pearl necklace from Japan for our 25th anniversary, the sapphire earrings from Thailand after I was appointed to the federal bench. Small things began to shift. Samantha would borrow a bracelet for a medical fundraiser and return it 2 weeks later with profuse apologies. Once I found her in my dressing room during Thanksgiving, claiming she was looking for safety pins to fix a broken strap. "You should catalog everything," she suggested over lunch one Tuesday. "For insurance purposes, I could help you photograph each piece." Thomas noticed nothing unusual. When I mentioned Samantha had borrowed my gold watch for 3 weeks, he laughed. "Mom, she's family. Don't you want her to enjoy beautiful things? You can't take them with you." The comment stung more than I let show. Maria, who'd been my housekeeper for 20 years, noticed more than my son did. "Senora Elizabeth," she said one afternoon after Samantha left, "that woman, she looks at your things like a cat watches birds." I dismissed Maria's concerns initially. Samantha came from poverty, I reasoned. Of course, she was fascinated by luxury. Hadn't I been the same when I first entered law school, surrounded by classmates who spoke casually of trust funds and summer homes? But then came the Tuesday I returned early from my book club with a migraine. Samantha's Mercedes sat in my driveway, though our lunch wasn't until the next day. I found her in my study photographing pages from my insurance documentation. "Thomas asked me to help update your records," she said smoothly, not a flicker of embarrassment crossing her face. "He worries you're not keeping proper track for estate planning." That evening, I called Thomas. "Did you ask Samantha to photograph my insurance papers?" A pause. "Why would I do that? Mom, are you feeling all right? You've been seeming paranoid lately about Samantha." The seed of doubt was planted. Was I becoming one of those suspicious old women who saw theft in every gesture Robert would have known what to do? He'd always been my compass in navigating family dynamics. Without him, I felt unmoored. 2 weeks later, I decided to test my instincts. While making tea in the kitchen, I told Samantha I was thinking of updating my will. "Everything will go to Thomas, of course," I said casually, watching her reflection in the microwave door, "including the pink diamond, though I'm considering donating it to the Metropolitan Museum. They've been asking for years." Her hand stilled on her coffee cup for just a moment. "That seems hasty. It's Thomas's heritage, too." "He's never shown interest in jewelry," I replied. "But his children might," she said quickly. "Your grandchildren deserve their family legacy." We had no grandchildren. 3 years of marriage, and she'd shown no interest in motherhood despite Thomas's gentle hints. But suddenly, my ring's future mattered to her. That night, I searched Thomas's laptop while he showered. He'd given me his password years ago for emergencies. In the browser history, I found searches I hadn't expected: Elizabeth Hartwell pink diamond value, Argyle pink diamond auction records, how to sell inherited jewelry. The dates matched Samantha's visits. My hands trembled as I closed the laptop. My daughter-in-law wasn't just admiring my collection, she was appraising it. Spring arrived early that year, bringing dogwood blossoms and an increasing frequency to Samantha's visits. 3 months before the theft that would shatter our family, she began appearing at my door with a consistency that should have alarmed me more than it did. "I brought you that turmeric tea I mentioned," she announced one Wednesday, breezing past me with a shopping bag full of amber bottles. "The woman at the health food store swears by it for arthritis." I didn't have arthritis, just the normal stiffness that comes with 68 years of living. But Samantha had latched onto my single complaint about morning joint pain and transformed it into a mission. She insisted on brewing the tea herself, measuring precise spoonfuls of the golden powder into my grandmother's teapot. "Drink it while it's hot," she urged, watching as I took the first sip. "The benefits compound over time." The tea tasted earthy and slightly bitter despite the honey she added. Within an hour, a pleasant drowsiness would creep over me, heavier than any afternoon fatigue I'd experienced before. I started scheduling our visits for days when I had no evening commitments, knowing I'd need to nap afterward. Maria noticed the pattern first. "Senora, you sleep like the dead after she comes. This is not normal." "I'm just getting older, Maria. The tea is probably just chamomile or valerian root mixed in." But Maria's frown deepened each time she found me dozing in my library chair, the empty teacup beside me still warm. Samantha's helpfulness extended beyond herbal remedies. "Let me organize your filing cabinet," she offered one afternoon, gesturing at the antique oak cabinet where I kept financial documents. "Thomas mentioned you've been putting off sorting through Robert's papers." The pain of that casual reference to my husband caught me off guard. Thomas knew I hadn't touched Robert's study because everything still smelled like his cologne and pipe tobacco. Using my grief as an entry point felt calculating, but I pushed the feeling aside. Perhaps she genuinely wanted to help. "That's kind of you, but I'll manage," I said. Her face fell with practiced disappointment. "I understand. It's just that Thomas worries. He says you won't let anyone help you with anything anymore. The manipulation was subtle, threading concern for my well-being with implications that I was becoming difficult. I recognized the technique from countless testimonies I'd heard in court, but somehow it felt different when wrapped in family dynamics and served with homemade tea. One afternoon in April, the drowsiness hit harder than usual. I excused myself to lie down, leaving Samantha in the living room with her laptop claiming she had work emails to answer. When I woke 2 hours later, my bedroom door was ajar, though I distinctly remembered closing it. Samantha stood near my dresser holding a bottle of aspirin. "I'm so sorry," she said, not looking sorry at all. "I had a splitting headache and didn't want to wake you. Thomas told me you keep aspirin in your bedroom." The aspirin was in my bathroom medicine cabinet, not the bedroom. But pointing that out would seem petty paranoid. I forced a smile and fetched her the bottle, noticing my jewelry box had been shifted slightly on the dresser's surface. After she left, I counted every piece. Nothing missing, but everything had been touched, examined. The insurance photographs I kept in the bottom drawer were out of order. I called Thomas that evening. "I think we need to talk about boundaries with Samantha." Boundaries. His voice carried the particular exhaustion of a 12-hour surgery day. "Mom, she's trying to help. You've been alone too much since Dad died. Maybe you're reading too much into normal family interactions." "She was in my bedroom, Thomas. Getting aspirin. Mom, do you hear yourself? This is my wife you're talking about." The conversation ended with his disappointment heavy between us. I'd raised Thomas to trust completely, to see the best in people. Had I done too good a job? I started paying closer attention, the judge in me awakening from grief slumber. Security cameras weren't unusual in our neighborhood. After a string of break-ins 2 years prior, most of us had installed systems. I asked my neighbor Harold, a retired IBM executive, if his cameras might have caught anything unusual. "Funny you should ask," Harold said, pulling up footage on his tablet. "I've seen that white Mercedes here several times when your car's been gone." The timestamp showed Samantha arriving 45 minutes after I'd left for book club, staying 2 hours. Another showed her there during my water aerobics class. A third captured her trying various keys at my front door before finding the right one. "Want me to save these?" Harold asked, his expression grave. "Please," I said, my stomach churning. That weekend, I found something that chilled me more than the unauthorized visits. Hidden between recipe cards in my kitchen drawer was a piece of paper in Samantha's distinctive handwriting, my safe combination. I stared at the numbers, trying to remember when I'd last opened the safe in her presence. Then it hit me. 6 weeks ago, she'd been sitting on my bed chatting while I put away Robert's cufflinks after finally cleaning out his dresser. I turned my back for just a moment to wipe my eyes, overwhelmed by handling his things. She must have watched me enter the combination in the mirror. When I confronted her the following Tuesday, she crumbled into tears so quickly I almost believed them. "Thomas asked me to check," she sobbed. "He's worried about break-ins. He wanted to make sure the safe was working properly. I'm sorry, I should have asked you directly, but he said you'd get upset." The lie was so smooth I might have believed it if I hadn't already spoken to Thomas. He'd been in surgery all week, hadn't discussed home security with anyone. I changed the combination that night, adding a secondary lock that required both a key and a code. The key went on my keychain, never leaving my possession. Maria started staying late on the days Samantha visited, finding tasks that kept her within earshot. "I don't trust her tears," she said bluntly. "In my country, we have a saying, the snake that cries while swallowing the mouse is the most dangerous." By early June, Samantha's behavior had escalated. She began asking about specific pieces, their provenance, their appraisals. "That pink diamond must have incredible history," she mentioned over lunch, stirring her salad with studied casualness. "Have you ever had it properly evaluated? Markets change so quickly these days." "The insurance company handles annual appraisals," I replied. "But specialty auction houses might give you better insight. Christie's, for instance. They have experts in historical pieces." She pulled out her phone, showing me recent auction results for pink diamonds. The figures were staggering, far exceeding my last appraisal. "See this one, 3.2 carats went for 800,000. Yours is what, 8 carats, and with the provenance." She let the implications hang. "It's not for sale," I said firmly. "Of course not," she agreed quickly. "I just thought you should know its true value, for Thomas's sake." That phrase became her refrain. Everything was for Thomas's sake. Her interest in my finances for Thomas's sake, her questions about my will for Thomas's sake, her sudden fascination with my health, definitely for Thomas's sake. The final piece of the puzzle came from an unexpected source. My friend Patricia, a fellow retired judge, called one evening with concern in her voice. "Elizabeth, this might be nothing, but my grandson works at Christie's. He mentioned someone's been making inquiries about selling a significant pink diamond. The person claimed to be representing an elderly family member. The description matched yours exactly." My hands were steady as I took notes, gathering names, dates, details. The person making inquiries had used a fake name, but left a contact number that, when I searched it online, linked back to Samantha's boutique. That night, I sat in Robert's study, surrounded by law books and memories, and made a decision. I wouldn't confront Samantha again. Instead, I'd give her exactly what she wanted, an opportunity to reveal her true nature. But first, I had one more test. I casually mentioned to Thomas that I was thinking of wearing the pink diamond to an upcoming charity function. "That's unusual," he said. "You never wear it out." "I'm getting older," I replied. "What's the point of keeping beautiful things locked away?" Within hours, Samantha called. "I heard you're planning to wear the ring out. How wonderful, which event?" I hadn't told her about any event. Thomas had already revealed his source. The storm was gathering. I could feel it in the electric tension of Samantha's visits, see it in her hungry glances toward my bedroom, hear it in the false concern coding her every word. 3 months of escalation had led to this moment. She'd studied me like a mark, mapped my routines, documented my valuables, and manipulated my son. What she hadn't counted on was that 35 years of presiding over criminal cases had taught me something valuable: how to build an airtight case. Every visit she'd made was logged. Every lie was documented. Every piece of evidence was preserved. The gathering storm would break soon, but when it did, I'd be ready with more than an umbrella. I'd have the full force of the law behind me and a pink diamond ring that would prove to be her downfall. As I locked away the evidence that night, I thought of my great-great-grandmother Elizabeth, who'd protected this ring through her own storms. She'd taught her daughter who'd taught hers, passing down not just jewelry, but the wisdom to guard what mattered. The storm was coming, but I was a Hartwell woman. We'd weathered worse. The invitation arrived on a Tuesday, hand-delivered by Samantha herself, with a fanfare that immediately put me on alert. She swept into my foyer wearing a cream-colored suit that probably cost more than most people's monthly mortgage, her smile bright enough to power a small city. "Elizabeth, I have the most wonderful news," she announced, producing an elegant envelope from her purse. "The hospital board approved my charity gala proposal. All proceeds will go to the new pediatric cardiac unit Thomas has been advocating for." I accepted the envelope, noting the weight of the expensive paper, the gold-embossed lettering. Inside, the invitation named me as guest of honor, a detail that sent warning bells ringing through my mind. "Guest of honor?" I asked, keeping my voice neutral. "That's quite unexpected." Samantha clasped her hands together in practiced delight. "Who better than the mother of our brilliant Dr. Hartwell? Besides, the board members all know you from your years on the federal bench. Your presence will guarantee attendance from the legal community." The flattery was laid on thick as molasses, sweet enough to cause cavities. I'd learned long ago that when someone suddenly elevates your importance, they usually want something in return. "When is this gala?" I asked, scanning the invitation. "Next Saturday. I know it's short notice, but the venue had a last-minute cancellation. The St. Regis Ballroom, can you imagine? It's like fate intervened." Fate or careful planning. I'd presided over enough fraud cases to know that last-minute opportunities rarely materialized without help. "I'll need to check my calendar," I said. Her face fell with the precision of a trained actress. "Oh, Elizabeth, please say you'll come. Thomas will be devastated if you're not there. He's been working so hard, and this gala could fund the equipment that saves children's lives. There it was again, Thomas as the emotional leverage sick children, as the moral imperative. Manipulation wrapped in charity's clothing, tied with a bow of family obligation. I'll let you know by tomorrow, I promised. But Samantha wasn't finished with her performance. I was hoping we could discuss what you'll wear. I want to make sure we coordinate photos and all. Would Thursday work for a planning lunch? Every instinct screamed danger, but I agreed. Sometimes the best way to understand a trap is to watch it being set. That evening I called Patricia. As a fellow retired judge and one of the few people who knew about my concerns regarding Samantha, her advice had become invaluable. Guest of honor at a last-minute gala. Patricia's voice carried appropriate skepticism. In my experience, when someone rolls out a red carpet, they're usually planning to pull it out from under you. My thoughts exactly. But if I refuse, it plays into her narrative that I'm a difficult mother-in-law who won't support her son's career. Then go, Patricia advised. But go prepared, document everything, and maybe have James on speed dial. James Morrison had been my lawyer for 20 years, handling everything from Robert's estate to my judicial retirement paperwork. More importantly, he specialized in criminal law and had connections throughout Connecticut law enforcement. Thursday arrived with spring thunderstorms that seemed appropriately ominous. Samantha appeared at my door precisely at noon carrying a garment bag and wearing an expression of determined cheer that didn't quite reach her eyes. I brought options, she announced, breezing past me toward the living room. The boutique received the most gorgeous gowns yesterday. I pulled several in your size. I watched her lay out 3 evening gowns across my sofa, each more elaborate than the last. The kind of dresses that demanded significant jewelry to complete the look. They're beautiful, I admitted, fingering the beadwork on a midnight blue creation, but perhaps too formal for my age. Nonsense, Samantha insisted. You're the guest of honor. You should shine. She paused, tilting her head with calculated innocence. Speaking of which, have you thought about jewelry? That pink diamond would be perfect with this navy dress. There it was, smooth as silk. I'd walked right into her web. I rarely wear the pink diamond, I said carefully. It's a bit much for charity events. But this is special, she pressed. Thomas would be so proud to see you wearing the family heirloom. Imagine the photographs, 3 generations of Hartwell distinction. 3 generations. Interesting that she was already counting herself as permanent family after 5 years of marriage that had produced no children, and from what Thomas had let slip, increasing tension about Samantha's spending habits. I'll consider it, I said, then deliberately changed the subject. Tell me more about the guest list. For the next hour, Samantha regaled me with names of attendees, corporate sponsors, and auction items. Her knowledge was impressive, the details too thorough for someone who'd supposedly organized this in a last-minute scramble. As she spoke, gesturing with manicured hands, I noticed her eyes kept drifting toward the stairs leading to my bedroom. The thunderstorm intensified, rain lashing against the windows. As if on cue, Samantha reached for her wine glass just as a particularly loud thunder crack shook the house. The red wine arced through the air in perfect trajectory, landing across the front of my blouse and spreading like blood. Oh my God, I'm so sorry. She jumped up, grabbing napkins, pressing them against my chest. Let me help you clean up. Do you have club soda? We need to treat this immediately. Before I could protest, she was guiding me toward the stairs. You change, I'll get the club soda. Where do you keep it? Actually, never mind, I'll find it. I climbed the stairs, my mind racing. The spill had been too perfect, her reaction too quick. In my bedroom, I changed into a clean blouse, then paused at my dresser. My jewelry boxes sat exactly as I'd left them, but something felt different. A lingering scent of perfume that wasn't mine, the faint impression of fingerprints on the polished wood. When I returned downstairs, Samantha was in the kitchen, vigorously attacking my stained blouse with club soda. I think I saved it, she announced proudly. Good thing I acted fast. Yes, I agreed. You certainly did. The rest of her visit passed without incident, but I noticed she'd stopped pressing about the pink diamond as if she'd accomplished what she'd come for. After she left, I went straight to my bedroom and examined everything. Nothing was missing, but my safe had been touched. The digital display showed an error message indicating multiple incorrect combination attempts. My new secondary lock remained intact, but there were tiny scratches around the keyhole suggesting someone had tried to pick it. I sat on my bed, heart pounding with anger rather than fear. She'd used the wine spill to get me out of the room, then tried to access my safe. The audacity was breathtaking. That evening, Thomas called from the hospital. "Mom, Samantha says you're being honored at the gala. That's wonderful." It was quite a surprise, I said carefully. "She's worked so hard on this," he continued, his voice warm with pride. "You know things have been tough lately. My hours, her struggles at the boutique. This gala has given her purpose again. I really need this to go well, Mom, for both our sakes." The manipulation was masterful. Now, if I refused to attend or caused any problems, I'd be sabotaging not just the charity, but my son's marriage. Samantha had boxed me in beautifully. "I'll be there," I assured him. "And Mom," his voice dropped, "maybe you could wear Dad's diamond cufflinks. I'd like to feel like he's there with us." My throat tightened. "Of course, sweetheart." After hanging up, I called James and related the safe incident. "She's escalating," he said gravely. "This party might be her endgame. What has she asked you to bring?" "The pink diamond ring," which would conveniently disappear during a crowded event later claimed as lost rather than stolen. Classic setup. He paused. "Elizabeth, I think it's time to involve law enforcement." "Not yet," I decided. "She hasn't actually taken anything. But James, I want you on standby next Saturday. If something happens, I need to move fast." I spent the next 2 days quietly preparing. I had the pink diamond ring appraised by an independent jeweler who provided detailed photographs and documentation. I installed a hidden camera in my bedroom that uploaded directly to cloud storage. I also spoke with Harold next door, asking him to save any footage of Samantha's visits. Most importantly, I visited my safe deposit box and placed the real pink diamond inside, replacing it at home with the replica I'd had made years ago for insurance purposes. If Samantha managed to take anything, she'd get a very expensive fake. Friday afternoon, she called to confirm my attendance. "I'm so excited," she gushed. "Everyone's talking about the guest of honor. Oh, and Elizabeth, I mentioned to a few people that you might wear the famous Hartwell pink diamond. I hope that's okay. It's creating such buzz for the auction." My jaw clenched. She'd publicly announced I'd be wearing a $2 million ring, essentially painting a target on my back. If it went missing, there'd be 300 witnesses to say I'd worn it to the event. "How thoughtful of you," I managed. "See you tomorrow at 7. It's going to be an unforgettable night." On that point, I suspected Samantha was absolutely correct. It would indeed be unforgettable, though perhaps not in the way she planned. I hung up and immediately called James. "I need you to contact your friend at the FBI. I believe Samantha's been in touch with a fence about selling my ring. If she takes it tomorrow night, they might be able to catch her in the act." "Consider it done," James assured me. "And Elizabeth, wear the fake. Let her hang herself." That night, I sat in Robert's study holding the replica ring up to the light. To the untrained eye, it was indistinguishable from the original. The pink cubic zirconia center stone caught the light beautifully, the surrounding white sapphires sparkling convincingly. "Help me through tomorrow, Robert," I whispered to his photograph. "Help me protect what you worked so hard to give us." The storm would break at tomorrow's gala. Samantha had set her stage, assembled her audience, and prepared for her grand performance. What she didn't know was that I'd be directing a very different show, one where the villain wouldn't receive applause but handcuffs. As thunder rolled across the Connecticut hills, I locked the fake ring in my bedroom safe, spun the combination, and smiled. Tomorrow, Samantha would discover that sometimes when you reach for diamonds, you grasp only glass. And sometimes, that's exactly what the judge ordered. Saturday morning dawned with the kind of crystalline clarity that makes Connecticut in June feel like paradise. Birds sang in my garden, sunlight sparkled off the dew, and I woke with violent nausea that sent me running to the bathroom. My hands shook as I gripped the porcelain, my stomach rebelling against what I initially assumed was nerves about the evening's gala. But as I rinsed my mouth and studied my reflection, a terrible certainty crept over me. This wasn't anxiety. The symptoms were too familiar, too precisely timed. The herbal tea, Samantha's special blend for my arthritis, brewed fresh just yesterday during her final pre-gala visit. She'd watched me drink every drop, chattering about centerpieces and auction items, while I'd grown increasingly drowsy. I'd slept for 3 hours afterward, the deepest sleep I'd had in months. Deep enough for someone to do almost anything without waking me. I forced myself to move normally as I made my way to the bedroom safe. My fingers trembled only slightly as I entered the combination and turned the key. The door swung open to reveal emptiness where the replica ring should have been. For a moment, I felt a surge of panic before remembering this was exactly what I'd expected. The real ring was secure in my bank's safe deposit box, but the violation still hit me like a physical blow. She'd drugged me, entered my bedroom while I lay unconscious, and stolen what she believed was a $2 million heirloom. The nausea wasn't just from whatever she'd put in my tea, it was from the betrayal, the calculated cruelty of a woman who'd smiled at me over lunch while planning to rob me. I sat heavily on my bed, then noticed my phone blinking with a message. The timestamp showed 7:43 a.m. "Hi, Elizabeth, running some last-minute errands for tonight. Borrowed your ring for the party, knew you wouldn't mind. Can't wait to see you shine as our guest of honor. Love, S." The casualness of it, the breezy tone as if stealing a $2 million ring was equivalent to borrowing a cup of sugar. She'd even added a heart emoji at the end. I read the message 3 times, each word another piece of evidence in the case I was building. Then I did what any federal judge would do when faced with a crime. I called my lawyer. James answered on the second ring alert despite the early hour. "Elizabeth, what's happened?" "She took it," I said simply. "Drugged me yesterday and stole the ring. She's texting like it's a casual borrowing, but we both know she has no intention of returning it." "The replica?" "Yes, thank God. But James, she drugged me. That's assault on top of grand larceny." "Do you still have the tea?" I hurried to the kitchen, relief flooding through me when I found the teapot still in the sink unwashed. Maria wouldn't be in until Monday. "Yes, and there's some left in the canister she brought." "Don't touch anything else. I'm calling Detective Mills now. We went to law school together, she's solid. Can you get to a doctor for blood work?" "I'll go to urgent care," I decided. "I want whatever she gave me documented." "Good. Save that text message and any others. Elizabeth, this is it. She's committed felony theft. With the drug evidence, we're looking at serious charges." "There's more." I told him about the FBI connection Patricia had mentioned. "If she's already contacted a fence, then she's walked into a federal investigation." I could hear the satisfaction in his voice. "I'll make some calls. In the meantime, act normally. Let her think she's gotten away with it." Acting normally proved challenging when every cell in my body wanted to storm over to her house and demand justice. Instead, I dressed carefully, ate toast to settle my stomach, and drove myself to the urgent care center. Dr. Patel, whom I'd known since she was a resident, took my blood and urine samples with growing concern as I explained the situation. "We'll test for common sedatives," she assured me. "Benzodiazepines, barbiturates, even some herbal compounds can be detected. You did the right thing coming in immediately." While waiting for initial results, I sat in my car and made phone calls. First to Patricia, who promised to attend the gala as my backup. Then to Harold, asking him to check his security footage from yesterday afternoon. "Actually," Harold said, "I saw something odd. That white Mercedes left your driveway around 4, but it came back an hour later. The driver wore sunglasses and a hat, but the build looked male." Thomas. My heart sank. Had my son been involved? Or had Samantha used his car knowing Harold would recognize it as belonging to family? The test results showed traces of zolpidem, commonly known as Ambien, at levels high enough to ensure deep sleep, but not enough to cause permanent harm. Dr. Patel provided detailed documentation and insisted I file a police report. "This is assault, Elizabeth. Whoever did this calculated the dose carefully. They wanted you unconscious, but not hospitalized. Detective Sarah Mills met me at the police station within an hour. A compact woman with intelligent eyes and graying temples, she took my statement with the focus of someone who understood the gravity of the situation. "Judge Hartwell," she said after I'd finished, "I remember watching you preside over the Matheson embezzlement case. You were brilliant. I'm sorry you're experiencing this betrayal." I showed her the text message, the medical reports, Herald's security footage information. She studied everything carefully, then made a decision that surprised me. "We could arrest her now," Detective Mills said. "But with your permission, I'd like to coordinate with the FBI. If she's planning to fence the ring tonight at the gala, we could catch her in a larger conspiracy." "You know about the FBI investigation?" She smiled slightly. "Your lawyer has excellent connections. Agent Rivera's been tracking a ring of jewelry thieves who target elderly victims through family connections. Your daughter-in-law's inquiries at Christie's raised red flags." The pieces clicked into place. Samantha wasn't just a greedy relative. She might be part of something larger, something that had destroyed other families before mine. "What do you need me to do?" I asked. "Attend the gala as planned. Act normally. We'll have agents and officers there undercover. When she makes her move to transfer the ring, we'll arrest her. And if she doesn't make the transfer tonight, then we arrest her anyway for the theft and assault. But these types usually move fast. They know the longer they hold stolen goods, the more likely they'll be caught." I left the police station with a wire transmitter taped under my ribs and instructions to act naturally. The hardest part would be seeing Thomas wondering how much he knew or suspected. That afternoon, I prepared for the gala with meticulous care. The navy beaded gown Samantha had selected fit perfectly, its elegance understated enough for a woman my age, but formal enough for a guest of honor. I wore Robert's diamond cufflinks as Thomas had requested their sparkle, a reminder of honest love in the face of calculated deception. Patricia arrived at 6 to drive me her presence a calming force. "You look beautiful," she said, then lowered her voice, "and brave. Robert would be proud." "I don't feel brave," I admitted. "I feel heartbroken. How did I miss this 35 years of reading criminals in my courtroom and I couldn't see the one at my own dinner table?" "Because you loved her as family," Patricia said gently. "That's not a failing Elizabeth. That's humanity." The drive to the St. Regis felt both eternal and far too quick. As we pulled up to the valet, I saw the grand ballroom ablaze with lights, elegant guests streaming through the doors. Samantha had created a beautiful stage for her crime. Taking a deep breath, I touched the wire under my dress and thought of the real pink diamond safe in its vault. Tonight, a different kind of justice would be served, one that proved sometimes the most precious gems are truth and the law itself. The valet opened my door and I stepped into the night ready for the performance of my life. Somewhere in that glittering crowd, FBI agents waited. In her triumph, Samantha had already sealed her fate. The day of reckoning had arrived dressed in designer gowns and false smiles. But beneath the glamour, justice waited with handcuffs that would fit as perfectly as any bracelet Samantha had ever coveted. The St. Regis Ballroom had been transformed into a medical miracle wonderland, with silver and blue decorations cascading from the ceiling like frozen waterfalls. Ice sculptures of stethoscopes and hearts dotted the room, while screens displayed images of children who would benefit from the new cardiac unit. It was beautiful, tasteful, and absolutely wasted on the crime about to unfold. I entered with Patricia at my side, immediately scanning for familiar faces among the 300 guests. Federal judges, hospital board members, prominent physicians, and Hartford society filled the space with expensive perfume and practiced laughter. Thomas stood near the bar in his best tuxedo, looking handsome and tired as he spoke with hospital administrators. Then I saw her. Samantha held court near the auction display, resplendent in a rose gold gown that probably cost more than most people's cars. But it wasn't her dress that caught every eye in the room. On her right hand, positioned to catch every light, sat my great-great-grandmother's ring. The pink stone blazed like captured sunset, the surrounding diamonds creating a constellation of wealth that had conversations stopping mid-sentence as people noticed it. "Dear God," Patricia breathed beside me. "She's actually wearing it." The audacity was breathtaking. Not only had she stolen it, she was flaunting it publicly, daring the world to question her right to wear it. As I watched, she gestured animatedly, making sure the ring remained visible, letting it tell its own story of privilege and power. "Elizabeth." Her voice carried across the room like a bell. She glided toward me, arms outstretched, playing the devoted daughter-in-law to perfection. "Our guest of honor has arrived." Air kisses brushed my cheeks as she embraced me, the stolen ring cold against my skin. Up close, I could see the fever brightness in her eyes, the slight tremor in her hands that spoke of adrenaline and anticipation. "You look wonderful," she gushed loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Though I notice you decided against wearing any significant jewelry. Probably wise at our age, such heavy pieces can be overwhelming." The insult wrapped in concern was delivered with surgical precision. Several guests glanced between us, no doubt wondering why the guest of honor wore only simple pearl earrings, while the hostess sported a ring worth more than most houses. "I prefer to let my presence speak for itself," I replied calmly, "though I see you found something lovely to wear." She held up her hand, letting the light play across the stones. It's been in Thomas's family for generations. His grandmother's ring passed down through the women. He insisted I wear it tonight, said it was time it saw the light instead of sitting in some dusty safe. The lie was so smooth, so perfectly delivered that I almost admired the performance. She'd already created a narrative Thomas had given her. The ring it belonged to his family, she had every right to wear it. "How interesting," I said. "I don't recall Thomas's grandmother having such a piece." "Oh, Elizabeth." She laughed, the sound like breaking glass. "You know how men are with jewelry details. He probably mixed up which side of the family it came from. The important thing is that it's being worn and appreciated." Detective Mills had been right. Samantha wasn't planning to hide the ring or secretly fence it. She was going to claim it had been given to her, create a public record of possession, and dare anyone to challenge her story. Thomas approached, then kissing my cheek with genuine warmth. "Mom, you made it. I was worried you weren't feeling well." "Just a touch of something," I said, watching his face. "Too much herbal tea, perhaps." Did I imagine the flicker of confusion in his eyes? Before I could analyze it, Samantha linked her arm through his. "Darling, I was just telling your mother about grandmother's ring. She seemed surprised you'd given it to me." Thomas frowned. "What ring?" The moment stretched like taffy. Samantha's smile never wavered, but her grip on his arm tightened. "This one's silly," she said, showing him the pink diamond. "The one you said I should wear tonight from your family collection." "Samantha, I never..." He stopped, really looking at the ring for the first time. Recognition dawned slowly, followed by horror. "Mom, isn't that..." "Ladies and gentlemen." The master of ceremonies saved Samantha from immediate exposure. "Please take your seats for dinner service." The crowd moved toward assigned tables, separating us in the flow. I found myself seated at the head table with Patricia and several hospital board members, while Samantha worked the room like a politician, that ring catching light with every gesture. Through the salad course, she regaled nearby tables with stories of the ring's history, each version slightly different, but all establishing her ownership. By the time the entrees arrived, half the room had heard how Thomas had presented it to her. For their anniversary, the other half, how it had been left to her by a mysterious European relative. I ate mechanically the wire under my dress, a constant reminder of the performance being recorded. Somewhere in this glittering crowd, FBI agents watched and waited. Agent Rivera himself might be the man in the too perfect tuxedo by the silent auction, or the woman bidding aggressively on the Tahiti vacation package. At exactly 8 p.m., Samantha took the microphone for her welcome speech. She thanked sponsors, praised the hospital, and spoke movingly about children whose lives would be saved. Then, with timing that felt rehearsed, she turned to me. "Tonight we honor someone special. My mother-in-law, Judge Elizabeth Hartwell, whose dedication to justice inspired my own small efforts at charity. Elizabeth, would you join me? Trapped by 300 expectant faces, I made my way to the small stage. Samantha embraced me again, positioning us perfectly for the photographer. "Smile," she whispered. "Everyone's watching." That's when I saw him. Thomas had moved closer to the stage, his face a study in growing alarm. He'd recognized the ring fully, now understood the impossibility of his wife wearing something from my safe. "Thank you all for supporting this worthy cause," I said into the microphone, surprising Samantha by taking control. "The cardiac unit will save lives, and that's what matters tonight. Not jewelry or status, but the children who will grow up because of your generosity." Applause rippled through the room. I started to step away when Samantha caught my arm. "Speaking of jewelry," she said brightly into the mic, "many of you have asked about this stunning ring. It's a family heirloom recently passed to me. We're actually considering donating it to the auction later, aren't we, Elizabeth, for the children?" The trap was elegant. Refuse and I'd look petty. Agree and I'd be complicit in her theft. But Samantha had made a crucial error. She'd gotten greedy, pushed too far. "That's a generous thought," I said clearly. "Of course we'd need to verify ownership papers first. After all, the FBI takes art and jewelry fraud very seriously. I believe they even have a special task force for pieces valued over $1 million. The words FBI and fraud landed like bombs in the genteel atmosphere. Samantha's smile flickered but held. "How thorough you are," she said. "Always the judge. Well, I'm sure all the paperwork is in order." She was still talking when the ballroom doors opened. Not dramatically, not with SWAT teams and shouted commands, simply a quiet influx of men and women who looked like late-arriving guests, except for the purposeful way they positioned themselves at exits. Agent Rivera materialized beside the stage, his credentials discreetly visible. "Ms. Hartwell, Mrs. Samantha Hartwell, I need you both to step off the stage, please." "What's happening?" Samantha's voice pitched higher. "This is a private event." Thomas pushed through the crowd. "What's going on, Mom?" I looked at my son's confused face, then at his wife's calculating one. Even now, she was planning, looking for an escape route. "Your wife stole my ring," I said simply. "She drugged me and took it from my safe." "That's ridiculous." Samantha laughed, but the sound was hollow. "She gave it to me. Tell them Thomas—" "I never gave you anything," Thomas said slowly. "Samantha, what did you do?" The mask finally cracked. For just a moment, I saw the real woman beneath desperate, angry, cornered. Then she rallied, turning to the crowd that watched in horrified fascination. "This is a misunderstanding," she announced. "Elizabeth has been confused lately, forgetful. Thomas, tell them about your mother's memory issues." My son's face hardened. "My mother has never had memory issues. Agent, that ring belongs in her safe. I saw it there last month when we updated insurance photos." "You're lying." Samantha spun toward him. "You promised, you said once we had it, we could start over. Pay off the debts, be free." The ballroom erupted in whispers. Thomas stepped back as if slapped. "What debts?" he asked. Agent Rivera stepped forward. "Mrs. Hartwell, you're under arrest for grand larceny and conspiracy to traffic stolen goods. You have the right to remain silent." "No." Samantha tried to run, but her designer heels and tight dress made flight impossible. 2 female agents flanked her with practiced ease. That's when she turned vicious. "She made me do it." The old witch flaunted her wealth while Thomas and I struggled. "Do you know what it's like watching her sit on millions while we can barely make mortgage payments?" "We don't have mortgage problems," Thomas said faintly. "I make $400,000 a year." "That's nothing," Samantha screamed. "Nothing compared to what she has. It should be ours. I earned it playing daughter-in-law to that sanctimonious—" "That's enough," Agent Rivera cut her off. He nodded to the officers who produced handcuffs. The sight of metal cuffs in the St. Regis ballroom created a surreal tableau. Society matrons clutched their pearls. Doctors murmured in shock. Cameras that had been documenting charitable giving now captured a very different moment. "Thomas," Samantha pleaded as they cuffed her, "don't let them do this. You love me." My son stood frozen, his world collapsing in real time. I wanted to go to him, but Patricia held me back. "Let him process," she whispered. "He needs to see this." As they led Samantha toward the exit, she managed one last performance. Tears streamed down her face as she called out, "I did it for us, Thomas. For our future children. Your mother would have kept everything locked away until she died." Then she was gone, leaving behind a ballroom full of shocked guests and a ring still gleaming on her finger. Agent Rivera approached me with professional courtesy. "Judge Hartwell will need you to identify the ring formally. We have jewelers standing by to verify its authenticity." "It's fake," I said quietly. "The real one is in my safe deposit box." His eyebrows rose slightly. "You knew she would take it." "I suspected. A lifetime of presiding over criminal cases teaches you to recognize patterns." "Smart." He turned to address the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, please remain calm. This is an active investigation. We'll need statements from anyone who spoke with Mrs. Hartwell about the ring tonight." The gala dissolved into chaos, but managed chaos. FBI agents circulated with notebooks. The auction was postponed indefinitely. Thomas stood alone by the stage, staring at the spot where his wife had been arrested. I finally went to him, Patricia at my side. "I'm sorry," I said simply. "How long?" he asked. "How long have you known?" 3 months of suspicion, 1 day of certainty. The ring, she really stole it. She drugged me, Thomas, slipped something into my tea and took it while I slept. He sat heavily in a chair meant for guests enjoying $1,000 dinners. She has debts, gambling, online poker. She hid it from me, but I found out last month. I thought we were working through it. The pieces clicked into place. Samantha's desperation, her escalating behavior, the timing of the theft. She'd seen my ring as the solution to problems she'd created and hidden. "I'm sorry," I said again, meaning it with every fiber of my being. "Don't," Thomas managed. "You tried to warn me. I loved her." "Love isn't always enough when someone's determined to deceive," Patricia said gently. "Your mother knows that better than most." The ballroom emptied slowly as guests trickled out, unsure how to process what they'd witnessed. Several stopped to offer support, others to share their own suspicions about Samantha that they'd never voiced. By 10 p.m., only law enforcement, hotel staff, and a few family friends remained. The decorations looked garish now, the ice sculptures melting into abstract shapes. Agent Rivera returned with the ring in an evidence bag. Even through plastic, the fake pink diamond caught the light. "Excellent replica," he noted. "She never suspected." "Where is she now?" Thomas asked. "Federal holding pending arraignment. With the interstate commerce angle and the connection to a larger theft ring, she's looking at significant charges." Thomas nodded slowly. "Good." It was the first step I knew in his journey from victim to survivor. The man who saved lives was learning that sometimes the heart itself needs surgery to remove what's diseased. As we prepared to leave, Harold appeared with his tablet. "Elizabeth, I thought you should see this. My cameras caught something interesting earlier." The footage showed Samantha's car arriving at 4 p.m., but the driver was indeed male. We zoomed in and my heart sank. It wasn't Thomas, but a stranger, young and nervous-looking. "That's her poker dealer," Thomas said quietly. "She introduced us once. Guess he was her accomplice." Another piece of evidence, another betrayal revealed. The night had stripped away illusions like layers of old paint, revealing the corrupt structure beneath. As we left the St. Regis, I looked back at the building blazing with lights. Somewhere in federal custody, Samantha was learning that borrowed rings come with their own kind of interest compound charges that accumulate into years behind bars. The raid had been surgical, precise, devastating. But as I held my son's arm and walked into the June night, I knew the real work was just beginning. Trust once shattered takes time to rebuild. But we were Hartwell people. We'd survived worse storms than this. The federal courthouse in Hartford buzzed with activity on Monday morning, but nowhere more than in courtroom 4, where Samantha's bail hearing had drawn a crowd of reporters, curiosity seekers, and those of us bound by the threads she'd woven into her web of deception. I sat with Thomas in the gallery, Patricia on my other side. My son had aged 5 years in 2 days, his surgical precision replaced by the fragility of betrayal. He'd stayed at my house since the arrest, unable to face the home he'd shared with a stranger, disguised as his wife. Samantha entered in orange jumpsuit and shackles, her rose gold gown replaced by federal reality. Without makeup and designer clothes, she looked younger, harder, like a completely different person. Perhaps this was who she'd always been. The United States versus Samantha Hartwell, the clerk announced. Charges include grand larceny, interstate trafficking of stolen goods, conspiracy to commit fraud, and assault in the second degree. Thomas flinched at each charge. I reached for his hand, finding it cold but steady. The prosecutor, a sharp young woman named Amanda Chen, laid out the case with devastating efficiency. The drug T tested positive for zolpidem. The fence Samantha contacted was indeed an undercover FBI agent investigating a ring targeting elderly victims through family connections. Bank records showed $600,000 in gambling debts across multiple platforms. Your Honor. Amanda continued, the defendant's phone contains messages planning to flee to Switzerland where she believed extradition would be difficult. She'd already transferred $40,000 to an account there. But the worst revelations came when Agent Rivera took the stand. His investigation had uncovered a pattern going back years long before Samantha met Thomas. The defendant has used multiple identities, he testified. Samantha Miller, Sandra Mills, Sarah Mitchell. Each time she targets medical professionals with wealthy parents, particularly widowed mothers. The courtroom stirred. Thomas grabbed my arm, his breathing shallow. We've identified 3 previous victims in California, Texas, and Florida. Each lost significant assets before the defendant disappeared. Total theft exceeds $3.8 million. That's impossible, Thomas whispered. I ran a background check before we married. Patricia leaned over. She probably used her real identity with you, kept it clean while her aliases did the dirty work. The defense attorney, looking overwhelmed, tried to argue for bail. He painted Samantha as a troubled woman with addiction issues who needed treatment, not incarceration. Judge Morrison, whom I'd known for 20 years, wasn't buying it. Counsel, your client drugged a 68-year-old woman and stole a ring valued at $2 million. She has multiple identities and victims across state lines. Bail is denied. The defendant will remain in federal custody pending trial. Samantha turned, then her eyes finding Thomas in the gallery. For a moment, her mask slipped, revealing something raw and desperate. Then her face hardened and she mouthed a single word, coward. Thomas stood abruptly and left. I found him in the hallway, leaning against the wall like a man who'd run a marathon. 3 others, he said. 3 other families destroyed. How did I not see it? Because you're a good man who believes in love, I said. That's not a weakness, Thomas. She weaponized your virtue against you. The revelations continued throughout the week. Samantha's boutique, it turned out, was a front. She'd been stealing from elderly clients, replacing valuable pieces with fakes, selling the originals through a network of corrupt dealers. The FBI found storage units filled with stolen goods awaiting transport. Thomas threw himself into the investigation, needing to understand the depth of deception he'd lived with. We spent hours in my study going through financial records, photographs, memories that now carried different meanings. Look at this, he said one evening, showing me their wedding album. Every picture with my colleagues, she made sure to stand next to the ones with the wealthiest parents. I thought she was being social. She was, I said gently, just not the way you thought. The doorbell interrupted us. Maria answered, returning with a nervous-looking young man I recognized from the surveillance footage, Samantha's accomplice from the car. Dr. Hartwell, Judge Hartwell. He shifted anxiously. I'm Derek Morrison. I need to talk to you. Thomas tensed, but I gestured for Derek to sit. He looked barely 25, all gangly limbs and guilty conscience. I didn't know, he began. About the ring, the real crimes. She told me you were a controlling mother-in-law who hoarded family wealth. said she just wanted to wear her grandmother's ring to one party. It was never her grandmother's ring, Thomas said coldly. I know that now. Derek pulled out his phone. But I thought you should see these. She had me recording conversations, said it was for protection against your mom's dementia accusations. The videos were damning. Samantha coaching Derek on what to say if questioned. Samantha on the phone with someone laughing about the old judge's stupid tea addiction. Samantha practicing her story about the ring being a gift, refining details with each repetition. Why show us this? I asked. Derek's Adam's apple bobbed. My grandmother has Alzheimer's. When I learned Samantha drugged you that she's done this to other elderly women, I couldn't live with it. I'll testify. Tell them everything. After Derek left clutching Agent Rivera's business card, Thomas and I sat in silence. The grandfather clock Robert bought in Switzerland ticked steadily, marking time in a world that suddenly felt foreign. The prenup's void, Thomas said eventually. My lawyer confirmed it. Fraud invalidates everything. What about the house? Mortgage is in my name, only thank God. But she cleaned out our joint accounts last month, said she was investing in the boutique expansion. He laughed bitterly. Expansion into federal prison, maybe. Maria brought tea, then caught herself. Sorry, Senora, maybe no tea for a while. Coffee, I decided. Strong and black and definitely not drugged. As we sipped Maria's powerful Colombian brew, Thomas pulled out his laptop. I need to show you something else. Her search history from our home computer. The searches painted a chilling picture. How to contest elderly parent wills. Signs of dementia to fake. Legal guardianship over resistant parent. How long before missing person declared dead? She was planning something worse, Thomas said quietly. Long term, if the ring theft failed. My blood chilled. The woman my son had shared a bed with had been researching my potential disappearance. The next morning brought more revelations. Local news had picked up the story, and suddenly my phone rang constantly. 3 families reached out recognizing Samantha's photo. Each told variations of the same story. A charming woman who'd befriended their elderly mother gained trust, then disappeared with valuables. She took my mother's entire coin collection. One caller from Texas explained. Mom died thinking her memory was failing, that she'd misplaced everything. We only learned the truth during estate settlement. I documented every call building a victim impact file. The U.S. Attorney's Office was grateful, using the information to add charges and strengthen their case. But the hardest conversation came when Thomas's hospital called. The board was concerned about the publicity, worried about the impact on fundraising and reputation. They want me to take a leave of absence, he told me that night, until things quiet down. That's unfair. You're the victim here. Am I? He stared into his coffee. I brought her into our lives. I defended her against your concerns. I gave her access to you. Thomas Andrew Hartwell. I used his full name like I had when he was young. You loved your wife. That's not a crime. Using that love to commit crimes, that's on her. A knock interrupted us. Harold from next door stood on my porch with his tablet and a flash drive. Elizabeth, I've been reviewing all my footage from the past year. You need to see this. The compilation was damning. Samantha visiting when I wasn't home, different cars dropping her off. Once a van backed into my driveway at 2 a.m., staying for an hour. Another time she was photographing my mail, capturing account numbers and financial institutions. She's been planning this for at least 18 months, Harold said. This was never about jewelry. It was about everything you have. That night, unable to sleep, I wandered into Robert's study. His presence felt strong there among his law books and pipe collection. I pulled out our wedding album, needing to see genuine love after swimming in so much deception. I protected the ring, I told his photograph, but I couldn't protect our son from heartbreak. The phone rang at dawn. Agent Rivera's voice was grim. Judge Hartwell, I thought you should know. We've uncovered more victims, 12 in total across 7 states. The DOJ is taking over prosecution. This is now a major federal case. 12 families, 12 versions of Thomas's pain and my violation, 12 stories of trust weaponized into theft. There's more, Rivera continued. We found correspondence between Samantha and an inmate at Danbury Federal Prison, her mother, doing 15 years for similar crimes. The apple, it seemed, hadn't fallen far from the poison tree. I found Thomas on the back porch watching sunrise paint the garden gold. He'd been crying the kind of deep cleansing tears that wash away illusions. It was all fake, he said. Every moment, every kiss, every I love you. How do I trust anyone again? You start small. I sat beside him, my own tears flowing. You trust that the sun rises, that your patients need you, that your mother loves you unconditionally, and slowly, carefully, you learn to trust yourself again. She's facing 20 years minimum, he said. Rivera called. With all the charges across multiple jurisdictions, consecutive sentences. Good, I said firmly. She stole more than objects. She stole faith, security, peace of mind. 20 years might begin to balance the scales. A cardinal landed on Robert's bird feeder, its red plumage bright against the morning. Thomas managed a small smile. Dad loved those birds, he remembered. Said they proved beautiful things could survive harsh winters. Your father was a wise man, I agreed. And you're his son. You'll survive this winter too. The unraveling was complete. Every thread Samantha had woven into our lives had been pulled, examined, revealed as counterfeit. But in the spaces between the severed strands, something new could grow. Truth, perhaps. Or just the simple appreciation for honest hearts in a world where pink diamonds could be fake, but family love remained real. The cardinal sang its morning song, and we listened to survivors planning their own migration toward hope. 6 months after Samantha's arrest, the November air carried the scent of wood smoke and possibility through my Connecticut garden. The roses had given way to chrysanthemums, and the maple trees blazed like torches against the gray sky. Change was everywhere, including in the man pruning the hedges, my son Thomas, who'd taken up gardening as therapy. The sentencing is next week, he called out, clipping with newfound precision. 8 years federal with 3 more consecutive in California. No possibility of parole for 7 years. How do you feel about that? I asked, bringing him hot cider from the kitchen. He considered carefully a habit he'd developed through months of therapy. Relieved. Not happy exactly, but relieved. It's enough time for her to pay and for me to rebuild. The rebuilding had been slow but steady. Thomas returned to surgery after a 2-month leave, his colleagues rallying around him with unexpected warmth. The hospital board, initially concerned about publicity, discovered that his honest handling of the situation had actually increased donations. People trusted a man who could admit he'd been deceived and still show up to save lives. I have something to show you, I said, leading him inside to Robert's study, now partially transformed into what I called my truth room. The walls displayed framed newspaper clippings, letters from victims, and photographs from the trial. But the centerpiece was a glass case containing 2 rings, the real pink diamond and its replica. You kept both? Thomas asked. The museum offered to display them together, I explained. The real and the fake side by side with our family's story. But I decided on something different. I handed him a folder from the Hartwell Foundation for Elder Fraud Protection, established with the insurance payout from the attempted theft and my own contribution. We've helped 43 families so far, I told him. Recovered assets, provided legal support, counseled victims. Maria runs the intake program. She has a gift for spotting deception now. Thomas flipped through success stories, his surgical hands gentle with the papers. Mrs. Chen got her mother's jewelry back. The Andersons recovered their father's coin collection. Mom, this is incredible. Patricia helped set it up. Turns out retired judges have extensive networks and plenty of time for righteous causes. And the rings stay here as reminders. The real one represents our heritage of strength. The fake shows that not all that glitters deserves our trust. Together, they tell a complete story. The doorbell chimed and Maria ushered in a familiar face, Derek Morrison, Samantha's former accomplice, now a key witness whose testimony had helped secure convictions. "Derek," Thomas nodded, civil but cool. "What brings you here?" The young man shifted nervously, holding an envelope. "I wanted to give you this in person. It's my first royalty check from the book." After the trial, Derek had written a memoir about being manipulated into crime, donating all proceeds to our foundation. His book, The Poker Dealer's Tell, had become an unexpected bestseller, helping people recognize manipulation tactics. $15,000, he said, handing over the check. "It won't undo what I helped her do, but maybe it'll help someone else." Thomas surprised us both by shaking Derek's hand. "You testified truthfully. That took courage. We all make mistakes. It's what we do after that defines us." As Derek left, I saw my son's growth. The bitter anger had transformed into something more useful wisdom about human nature and the choice to remain open despite betrayal. The late afternoon brought an unexpected visitor. Thomas had returned to the garden and I was writing thank you notes to foundation donors when Maria announced, "A woman to see you, Senora. Says her name is Linda Hartwell." Samantha's mother stood in my foyer, 15 years of federal prison etched into her face. She was thin, gray-haired, nothing like the polished con artist in her arrest photos. "I'm out on supervised release," she said quickly. "Not here to cause trouble, I needed to apologize." Every instinct screamed danger, but something in her eyes, a haunted quality I recognized from my years on the bench, made me gesture to the living room. "5 minutes," I said. Linda sat on the edge of the sofa, hands clasped. I taught her everything. The targeting, the manipulation, the long game. Started when she was 12, thought I was giving her survival skills. "You were teaching her to be a predator." "Yes," she agreed simply. "I was. My mother taught me, said it was how women like us survived in a world that gave us nothing. But sitting in that cell for 15 years, I realized we weren't surviving. We were spreading poison." She pulled out a worn envelope. "I've been corresponding with my daughter since her arrest. These are her letters. I thought you should see them." I hesitated, then took the envelope. Inside were pages of Samantha's handwriting, the early letters full of rage and blame, the later ones beginning to show cracks in her armor. "She hates me now," Linda said. "Blames me for everything which is fair. But maybe someday she'll understand what I'm trying to tell her. The con never ends well. It always collapses, leaving nothing but wreckage." "Why tell me this?" "Because your son loved my daughter, really loved her. And somewhere under all my training and her greed, I think she might have loved him too. That terrified her more than any FBI raid." After Linda left, I sat with the letters reading Samantha's gradual recognition of what she'd thrown away. The final letter, dated just last week, contained a single line that stopped my heart. "I dream about the life I could have had if I'd just been myself." I found Thomas still in the garden now, lit by the setting sun. Without speaking, I handed him Samantha's letters. He read them slowly, his face cycling through pain, anger, and finally something like peace. "She's broken," he said quietly. "Really broken. Not fake tears or manipulation, but genuinely shattered." "Does that change anything?" "No," he decided after a long pause. "But it helps. Knowing it wasn't all calculation, that somewhere in there was a real person who got lost." We stood together in the garden Robert had designed, where beauty persisted through every season. The Foundation's latest newsletter lay on the porch table, featuring testimonials from families we'd helped and announcing our new partnership with the FBI's Elder Fraud Division. "I've been thinking," Thomas said, "about Dad's cufflinks you wore to the gala, how he always said jewelry should be worn, not hoarded. Maybe it's time to follow that advice." "What do you mean?" "The pink diamond. Let's loan it to the Smithsonian for their deception and detection exhibit. Let millions of people learn from our story." I considered this, thinking of my great-great-grandmother Elizabeth and all the strong women who'd protected this ring. Perhaps the ultimate protection was transforming it from a secret treasure into a public lesson. I'll call them tomorrow, I agreed. But I want our full story told. The trust, the betrayal, the recovery, all of it. As if summoned by our conversation about moving forward, a car pulled into the driveway. Thomas stiffened until he recognized the driver, Dr. Sarah Chen, from the hospital, not related to the prosecutor, despite the shared surname. She'd been bringing him case files and increasingly homemade dinners. "I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, carrying a covered dish. "I made too much lasagna and thought—" "You thought correctly," I interrupted, smiling at Thomas's flustered expression. "Stay for dinner. Maria sets extra places automatically these days." Over lasagna and honest conversation, I watched my son slowly lower walls he'd built. Sarah knew his story had seen him at his worst during the hospital's investigation and still showed up with food and gentle friendship. "Trust isn't binary," she said when the topic arose. "It's a garden. You plant carefully, tend daily, and sometimes, despite your best efforts, weeds grow. But that doesn't mean you stop gardening." Thomas walked her to her car after dinner, returning with the first genuine smile I'd seen in months. "Just friends," he said quickly. "Of course," I agreed. "Friends who bring lasagna and make you smile." That night, I updated the Foundation website with our latest success story and announcement of the Smithsonian exhibition. The pink diamond would tell its tale to millions, but more importantly, we were building something greater than any heirloom, a network of protection for the vulnerable and a legacy of truth over deception. The phone rang Patricia, calling with news that the foundation had received its nonprofit status and a significant anonymous donation. $20 million, she said, excitement crackling through the phone. The note just said, "From one who learned too late that real wealth is trust." Later investigation would reveal the donor as one of Samantha's previous victims, a Texas oil heiress who'd recovered her fortune and wanted to prevent others' losses. But that night, we simply marveled at how pain could transform into purpose. As November surrendered to December, bringing the first snow, I stood in my truth room, looking at the two rings. The real pink diamond would soon travel to Washington, carrying its story to the world. The fake would remain here, a reminder that even false things can teach true lessons. Thomas appeared in the doorway holding 2 mugs of cocoa. "No herbs," he joked, "just chocolate and marshmallows." We sat in Robert's old leather chairs watching snow blanket the garden where everything would bloom again come spring. The foundation's phone rang constantly now, with families seeking help, volunteers offering support, and media wanting our story. "We survived," Thomas said quietly. "More than that, we're thriving." "Your father always said the best revenge is a life well lived," I reminded him. Though I'd add a life well lived in service to others who face what we faced. "To Dad," Thomas raised his mug, "to the truth, and to new beginnings that honor old wisdom." Outside, snow covered the scars in the garden where summer's theft had torn roots, but beneath the white blanket bulbs waited patiently for spring, carrying within them the promise of beauty after darkness. The pink diamond ring would make its final journey soon from my safe to the Smithsonian, where its story would educate thousands. But its greatest journey had already occurred, from a symbol of family wealth to an instrument of justice, from a burden to be protected to a gift freely given. In the warmth of my study, surrounded by evidence of pain transformed into purpose, I thought of all the women who'd worn this ring before me. Each had faced her trials, protected what mattered, and passed on something precious to the next generation. Now it was my turn to pass it on, not to one woman, but to many, not as jewelry, but as education, not as a treasure to hide, but as truth to share. "Mom," Thomas said softly, "thank you for everything, for seeing through her, for protecting the ring, but mostly for showing me how to rebuild after betrayal." "You rebuilt yourself," I corrected. "I just kept the porch light on." As midnight approached, bringing us closer to the sentencing that would close one chapter of our story, I made a decision. Tomorrow, I'd call the Smithsonian and arrange the donation. But tonight, I'd wear the ring one last time, honoring all the Hartwell women who'd kept it safe for this moment when its true purpose would be revealed. The fake ring would stay in my truth room, teaching visitors that not all deceptions succeed, that truth has its own beauty, and that sometimes the greatest inheritance we can leave is the wisdom to see clearly and the courage to act justly. In federal prison, Samantha was learning these lessons too late, but for the rest of us, every dawn brought new chances to choose truth over deception, trust over suspicion, and purpose over pain. The Foundation's mission statement framed above my desk captured it perfectly: protecting the vulnerable, educating the trusting, and proving that even broken trust can be rebuilt into something stronger. As snow continued to fall, blanketing Connecticut in fresh white possibility, I closed my eyes and thanked Robert, my mother, and all the strong women who'd brought us to this moment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new families to help, new stories to hear. But tonight, in the warmth of my home with my son nearby and purpose filling our hearts, I knew we'd already won the only victory that mattered. We'd transformed violation into vigilance, theft into teaching, and a family's pain into countless families' protection. The pink diamond caught the lamplight one last time on my finger. Then I removed it, placed it carefully in its velvet box, and prepared to set it free. Its work as a private treasure was done. Its life as a public trust was about to begin. And in that transformation, we all found our new beginnings. To everyone who's watched this story unfold, I have a question. Have you ever discovered someone you trusted was not who they seemed? How did you rebuild after betrayal? Share your story in the comments below. Your experience might be the lighthouse someone else needs to navigate their own storm. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe to hear more true accounts of triumph over deception. Share this video with anyone who might need to hear that betrayal isn't the end of the story. It's often the beginning of something stronger. Thank you for joining me on this journey from blind trust to clear sight. Remember, the most precious gems in life aren't always the ones we lock in safes, but the wisdom we gain and share freely. Until next time, stay strong, stay wise, and always trust your instincts. They're worth more than all the pink diamonds in the world.